guess what today is? Or guess what this weekend is, more importantly. Not today, this weekend.
Am I supposed to
Take a wild guess what's happening this weekend.
Oh,
The NFL
boy.
playoffs are starting this weekend with the wild card round first and foremost. Up first is going to be the Carolina Panthers going against a team which I cannot remember, and then of course the nightcap is going to be the Bears and the Packers on Amazon Prime, of course, which is a travesty if we go back to the day. But anyway, what's even more important about this weekend is that by the NFL playoffs starting this weekend, we also kind of know something already, or at least the opportunity to decide on something has ended, and that is the NFL most valuable player for this season. So you might be wondering, how do you determine who the most valuable player is for the NFL season?
It has to be a whole lot of stats.
Has to be a whole lot of stats. Well, so like I said, once the NFL playoffs start, the voting period to determine who the NFL MVP has ended. So that means now typically you will hear people say voting ends like the day after the regular season ends, or like a couple days after the NFL season ends. There's no defined specific date, but it all has to be done before the playoffs start. And we won't know who actually wins the NFL MVP until this year. It's going to be February 5th, which is going to be a Thursday, which is like right around or right before the Super Bowl, I do believe. It's either right before or right after the Super Bowl. So technically, an NFL MVP has already been decided upon, but nobody knows who that MVP is. And right now, there are 5 players who are kind of on top of that list of who might win the NFL MVP. But in all reality, it's really come down to 2 players. So I've created a stat sheet for the top 5 players, in my humblest of opinions. That's going to be Trevor Lawrence, and forgive me if I forget these names because I'm horrible with names. But first up, we're going to take a look at Trevor Lawrence. Then I believe we'll look at maybe Drake May, Bo Nix, Josh Allen, and Matthew Stafford. Not in that particular order, but those are the top 5 players. But in reality, it's only come down. Most people have concluded that's going to be a 2-man race between New England Patriots quarterback Drake May and the LA Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford.
I have a question.
You have a question. What is that question?
Are all MVPs quarterbacks?
Oh, that's a great question, and we're going to look at that here in just a minute. There is no hard, fast rule that all MVPs have to be quarterbacks. Other players have won in the past, but we'll get to that here. So who determines who actually wins the NFL MVP? That's the first question we have to figure out. Who makes this decision?
I thought the stats make the decision.
Well, who's objectively looking at the stats to qualify and quantify what stat is more important and who has those better stats?
The sanctioning organization?
You mean the NFL? No, the NFL does not determine who their MVP is. It is determined by 50. There are 50 people who are considered NFL media members. It used to be just sports writers back in the day, but nowadays they just call it NFL media members. And these 50 people are anonymous. So they don't make they don't make the information public because they don't want those people being hounded by the media and trying to get, or trying to sway and influence who they want to vote for. And they want to make sure they don't get any, motivation to vote for anybody else. You know what I'm saying? Now,
okay. That seems troubling.
There are 50 of these people, media members. So that does include like sports writers, but like in the past, it can include like TV analysts. Like in the past, I know Troy Aikman has been an MVP voter. Tony Dungy has been an MVP voter after, of course, he was a coach. So it can be like actual analysts, people who call the game, but also like newspaper sports writers and columnists and things like that. You might be wondering, 50, is that a lot or is that not a lot of people to determine who wins the NFL MVP?
That's not what I'm wondering.
Well, what are you wondering?
I'm wondering why, if there's a body of data, that this can't just be run through and analysis.
Because that's the great thing about statistics. You can make statistics match the argument that you want to make. everybody says numbers don't lie, but at the same time, numbers can confirm your argument, or you can make the numbers work in your favor versus a different argument. So while numbers are just straightforward, the statistics are straightforward, the argument that you can make using them can be subjective. That's why you want a number of different people arguing. And then there's also, well, what's a more important stat? And what do those stats say in isolation or in connection to a different stat?
And I guess in connection to the value to the team.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
So for example, let's say we're looking at two quarterbacks. Let's say one quarterback has 1,000 yards passing. Another quarterback has 900 yards passing, right? Well, 1,000 yards passing is more than 900. So that person, the person that has the 1,000 yards passing, is a better passer, right? Sure. But what if that person threw 12 interceptions, but the other person who threw 900 yards only threw 5 interceptions? Who's the better quarterback then?
I guess it's arguable.
It is arguable. And that's why you have different people voting on who they think is the best player or the most valuable player in the NFL. So in comparison to the 50. So for example, like the Heisman Trophy, that is voted on by like 1,000 different people get to vote on who the Heisman Trophy winner is, which is the college equivalent award to this. And I think the Major League Baseball and the National Basketball Association, I think they do roughly 30 people voting on theirs. There's a in between. It's not the most, it's not the least. But anyway, let's move on to some of these stat sheets. So the first person we're going to look at is Trevor Lawrence from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And most people out there are going to be like, well, he is not a Super Bowl. I mean, he is not a NFL MVP caliber quarterback based on his stats. And in this year, you're right, he is not. But the stats are worth looking at just to get an understanding of what a good quarterback stats looks like compared to a great quarterback stats look like. And he's also on some websites, he's on there and he's listed as like the 5th most likely person to get it. So let's look at completion percentage. He has completed 61% of his passes. So where does that rank among all quarterbacks in the league? That is 36th in the league. So it's pretty far down there. Now, however, he's thrown 4,000 passing yards, which is the sixth most passing yards. So he's thrown a ton of passing yards, but his completion percentage isn't very high. He's also thrown 29 touchdowns, which is the 5th best in the league. So his passing yards and his touchdown are both in the top 10, top 6, and top 5. His interceptions, he's thrown 12 interceptions, which quite frankly is a lot of interceptions for a quarterback. That's actually the 6th most interceptions thrown. His passer rating, how do you determine a quarterback's passer rating? Don't ask me. But it is 91, which is 20th in the league. So it's not the best. It's kind of like middle of the pack. So while he has like top 5 touchdowns and again, top 10 passing yards, which is really good, the completion percentage and the number of interceptions really holds him back. But it's a good starting point. Next up, we're going to look at Josh Allen. And Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills, quarterback again. He is often thrown in this argument of he's one of the top tier quarterbacks. He's in the MVP race every single year, but is he really that great? Well, his completion percentage is 69.3%, and that is 4th in the NFL. So that's pretty high. He's top 5 in completion percentage. Now, again, in context, his passing yards, though, he has 3,600 passing yards. That means he's 11th in passing yards. So he's thrown outside of the top 10 in passing yards, but he's in the top 5 of completions. So what's more important? You have to kind of, and that's why, again, you have 50 different people deciding on this. What's more important, completion percentage or passing yards? Because he doesn't have even really close to the most passing yards, but he has almost the highest completion percentage.
I have a question.
Yes. What's your question?
Why can't these 50 people decide on what's more important and then that stays the decision?
Because, again, you can't. That would be an argument that cannot be made. You can't say, well, touchdowns are more important, and here's why. Let's say you look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is going to throw X amount of touchdowns. Lamar Jackson is also going to run X amount of touchdowns. So what's more important, a rushing touchdown or a passing touchdown? If you're a quarterback, you can make the argument, well, a passing touchdown is more important because that's your job to throw the football. But in today's NFL, many quarterbacks are rushing quarterbacks as well. So how valuable, how much weight should a rushing touchdown from a quarterback count against their ability to throw the ball?
So as the game changes and as players are playing the game more nuanced and uniquely year over year, you have to have a different group of people every year.
And what's a better touchdown? Is a 5-yard touchdown pass more valuable than a 20-yard touchdown pass? If I throw a 50-yard touchdown pass, that's more impressive than if I run it in from the 1-yard line.
Gotcha.
So there's all kinds of these variables, and that's when you can get really granular and kind of look at each statistic, and then you start looking at, okay, what are the plays behind the statistics? And again, that's why you need a panel to make a vote.
Do they get paid for that?
Now, I'm not sure if they get paid. Now, it's not like they come together and agree upon this. There's a system behind it, and we'll get into that system in a little bit. But so Josh Allen, going back to Josh Allen, 69% completion passage percentage, which is 4th in the NFL. Passing yards, he's 11th. Touchdowns at 25, he is 9th in the league. Interceptions, he has 10, which is pretty high up there. His passer rating is 5th in the league. So he's a top 10 quarterback. You could make the argument he's a top 5 quarterback, but he's not like the 1 or 2 best QBs in the league. But again, it's also not just up to QBs, even though everybody we're going to look at is QBs. So next up is going to be the Denver Broncos quarterback, and that's going to be Bo Nix. He's really blown up this year, but his completion percentage is at 63%, which is low. That's 25th in the league. So that's not great. His passing yards, he's 8th at 3,900. His touchdowns, he's got 25, which puts him at 9th. He has 11 interceptions. His passer rating is 26th in the league. So this guy, he's a top 10 quarterback, but he's getting a lot of media hype, and that takes into account as well. If I hear about a quarterback all the time, and he's praised on the media all the time, and everybody keeps telling me how great he is, does that influence the way I look at a player's stats? Do I take into account, well, it's not really his fault on this interception because his wide receiver dropped the ball, or it was a tip, or the fact that he lost yards on this play isn't his fault, it's the offensive lineman's fault. That's where the media, and that's why we want to keep these names, or the NFL wants to keep who votes on this anonymous. Now, we're going to start looking at the predicted top 2 NFL MVP winners here. Who's this race really coming down to? And we're going to look at the New England Patriots quarterback, and that's going to be Drake May. So here's where the numbers really take a jump. So I want you to listen to these numbers. I want you to tell me, after listening to these 2 players' stats, who do you think deserves it? So Drake May, completion percentage. He is 1st in the NFL. He has the best completion percentage at 72%. Passing yards, he is 4th in the league, 4th best with 4,400 yards. Touchdowns, he has 31 touchdowns, which puts him at 3rd best in the league. So listen to those stats. 1st in the league, 4th, and 3rd in the league. That's some pretty important stats: completion percentage, passing yards, and touchdowns. Then we get into interceptions. He's only thrown 8 interceptions, which is better than the previous 3 quarterbacks we just looked at. His passer rating is 1st in the league. So Drake May has multiple first statistics in the NFL.
Okay.
All right. Now let's look at the second best pick for this year's NFL MVP, and that's going to be the LA Rams quarterback, Matthew Stafford. His stats: completion percentage is 65. And here's a problem. That's 17th in the league. That's not good. But context: passing yards. He has 4,700 passing yards. That's 1st in the league. So remember, Drake May has 4,400 passing yards, and that's 4th. Matthew Stafford has 4,700 passing yards, and that's 1st. So he's throwing more passing yards. He's throwing for more yards than any other quarterback in the league. Now what's the correlation there? Is his percentage just going down more because he's throwing it more? So what's more important, the percentage or the passing yards? Also, his touchdowns. He's thrown 46 touchdowns. And guess what? That's 1st in the league.
Got you.
Now, 46. Drake May only had 31. and he's third in the league. So he's got more than 10 more touchdowns on the year than Drake May does. Interceptions, same. He has 8 interceptions. So they have the same amount of interceptions. His passer rating is second to, of course, Drake May, who was first. So this person, Matthew Stafford, has 2 stats, passing yards and touchdowns, and that are the best in the league. And objectively, I could be like, well, what are you talking about? He's obviously the MVP. He's a quarterback. His job is to pass the ball and score touchdowns from passing the ball. And he's done that better than any other quarterback in the league.
Got you.
So who is the MVP out of those 2 players?
I would say the second guy, but I have a question.
Yes. What's your question?
Completion. What is completion?
Completion percentage.
What is that?
So it's what's the percentage? How many attempts did you have? And what is the percentage of those attempts did you actually complete?
Attempts meaning?
So if I throw the ball to you 2 times and you drop one of them and catch one of them, my completion percentage is 50%.
Gotcha.
So again, we attribute that to the quarterback.
But that doesn't necessarily all attribute be okay.
And then but then you have to look at the individual plays. Then did the wide receiver just drop the ball, or did the quarterback just completely throw the ball over his head, just completely miss him altogether?
Okay, so the second guy we talked about, his
Matthew
completion is, you said
17th. Not good.
Not good.
But he has the most passing yards and the most touchdowns.
So when you say passing yards, he's throwing the ball far to get across the field.
Again, here we go. This is the great thing about statistics. It tells a story, but it doesn't tell the whole story. If let's say Matthew Stafford threw the ball 1 yard down the field, his wide receiver catches it. That's 1 yard of passing. But let's say that wide receiver who caught the ball then runs it 50 yards down the field for a touchdown. That is now 51 yards passing.
Got you.
Even though he only threw the ball technically 1 yard, the wide receiver then broke a tackle, juked somebody out of shoes, hurdled somebody, and scored a touchdown. All those yards after the catch. There's a stat called yards after the catch that goes to the wide receiver, but that still all counts as passing yards for the quarterback.
That is interesting, because now I would like to know how well those receivers are actually.
Correct. And is his completion percentage bad because his wide receivers are dropping the ball? We don't know. That's where, I don't know, because I don't follow these teams closely like that, but that's where the people who have the MVP votes, I believe the expectation is that, they of course follow the sport very closely, and they look at these individual plays and be like, okay, let's weigh these things out. Are
they dropping the ball, or are they carrying it? Like when they do catch it, are they carrying it and taking it far? Well,
no, that's the thing. If we're talking about completion percentage, why is his completion percentage so low? Is it because his wide receivers aren't that good and they're dropping the ball? Now, maybe he has a lot of passing yards because he's constantly throwing the ball down the field. Or then again, maybe he has a lot of passing yards because he's throwing the ball short, but his wide receivers are making the moves to break a tackle and keep moving down the field.
Okay.
We don't know. I don't know that because I haven't seen all of these players' plays. Now, there's one more thing. There's one more player I'm going to bring up. Those are the top 5. And again, it's really between Drake May and Matthew Stafford, the last 2 players we just talked about. There's going to be one more player I just briefly touched on, and that is Jared Goff. He is the quarterback for the Detroit Lions. And he is also very high on these stats. He would actually be, what did I say? He would be in like second place for passing yards and touchdowns, I believe. So he's up there, and he is a legitimate NFL MVP contender. But the reason why I didn't include him on the list is because his team didn't make the playoffs. Now, that brings up another very important question. I just said NFL MVP voting is over because the playoffs are about to start. So that means the NFL MVP award is a regular season award only. They don't take into account what happens in the playoffs because it is only about the regular season. But I just said I'm not including Jared Goff because his team didn't go to the playoffs. So how can that be? If it's a regular season award, why am I not taking into account what Jared Goff did in the regular season if his statistics support him being in the race?
Well, you tell me.
Well, very simply, there has only been 2 times in the history of the NFL MVP award that a player won the award that their team did not go to the playoffs. And that was literally, the first player was in 1967, and that was Johnny Unitas. And the second player was in 1973, and that was O.J. Simpson, of all people. So
So
it
they
has
don't
been
like
since.
that to be the case.
Right. So that's why they don't take into account what happens in the playoffs, but I believe it is taken into account whether or not your team makes it to the playoffs if you are considered at one of those top positions, since it has not happened since 1973. Gotcha. So we talked about the deadline. We talked about who votes for it. Now, we talked about why the playoffs don't count, and it doesn't count in any league. It doesn't count in college football. It doesn't count in baseball. It doesn't count in basketball. All MVP awards are for regular season only, and then of course they'll have like Super Bowl MVPs and things like that. So how exactly does voting actually work? So this just changed in 2022, and there's a few reasons why it changed. There was 2 times in history, and we'll take a look at this in a little bit. There were 2 times in the history of this award that there was a tie. Now there are no more ties, and there's a reason for that. But it used to be that they would just take first place votes. Like if there's 50 voters, they would all cast their vote for one player, and whichever player had the most votes of those 50 would be the MVP. That naturally might lend to someone getting the same number of votes as somebody else. And it did 2 other times. That is no longer the case anymore. Now there is a whole little system. There is everybody votes for 5 positions. So they take their top 5 and they rank them 1 through 5. And there's a point value associated with what position you get put in. So if I look at 5 different players, and I have a vote, I look at 5 different players. I have Trevor Lawrence as my first place winner. That player, Trevor Lawrence, gets 10 points for my first place vote. I say Josh Allen is second. Josh Allen will get 5 points for my second place vote. I say Bo Nix is third place. Bo Nix will get 3 points for my third place vote. I say Drake May is fourth place. He will get 2 points for that vote. And I say Matthew Stafford is fifth place. He'll get 1 point for that vote. So all 50 players rank their top 5 players, or their top 5 MVP winners, 1 through 5. All the first place votes get 10 points, second place 5, third place 3, fourth 2, and fifth 1. And then they add up all the points after that to determine who has the most points. So the example from like 2022, Patrick Mahomes, he had 48 first place votes. So 48 times 10 is 480 points.
48 of the 50 people?
Yes.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Okay.
He had 2 second place votes, which would be 10 more points. So he had a total of 490 votes for MVP. And of course, he won. Jalen Hurts was in second place. He had 1 first place vote, which would only be worth 10 points. Then he had 26 second place votes, so on and so forth. He had 11 third place and 10 fourth place votes and no fifth place votes. So he only got, out of all those combined, he had 193 votes. So that year, Patrick Mahomes ran away with it. But that is just an example of what that voting system works like. But there is still an opportunity, even with all that, for ties. But they have a tiebreaker system now because they absolutely do not want ties anymore. So the way that the tiebreakers work, let's say Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts had the same amount of votes in 2022. They would then look at which player had the most first place votes, not points, but the most first place votes. So let's say 40 people voted him first place, and only 10 people voted the other player second place, or first place. I mean, the person with the 40 first place votes would win. On top of that, if the number of ballots appeared on. So this is kind of, to me, this is irrelevant. Because if you're tied for first place, you're going to appear on most all of the ballots. But let's say there's 50 voters. All 49 of the voters put you on the ballot, but one of them left you off for some reason. Like you appeared on that more times than someone who appeared, or less times than someone who appeared on all 50 of the ballots for some reason. And then finally, the most second place votes. I think those are the 2 biggest things. They look at who got the most first place votes, and then they look at who got the most second place votes. And that will be used to determine who wins the tie if there is a tiebreaker.
Got you.
Going back to ties, when has there been a tie before? So this goes back to, I have to look at my graphic here because there's only been 2 times in history. This happened most recently in 2003, and that was Peyton Manning and Steve Air McNair, both quarterbacks, of course. They were tied for NFL MVP, so they actually gave them co-MVPs that year.
Ah.
And then it happened one more time in 1993 or 5. I can't remember. But it was Barry Sanders, and heck, it might have been I can't remember who else it was. It was Barry Sanders and one other player. I think Brett Favre, actually. I think it was Brett Favre and Barry Sanders, and they were co-MVPs as well. So those are only 2 times it's ever happened. Now, going back to your question about whether or not it's only ever QBs. No, it's not, but we take a look at this graphic I have here. This graphic shows that the last non-quarterback to win NFL MVP was in 2012. And that was Adrian Peterson, running back for the Minnesota Vikings. So it's been since 2012 that a player other than a quarterback has won the NFL MVP. And some random websites out there have put Christian McCaffrey on the potential MVP winner. He's the running back for the San Francisco 49ers, but it's not going to happen.
Gotcha.
And that is, long story short, how NFL MVP winners are determined, who votes on them, the history of them, and who's in the race for it this year. My expectation is that most likely, I'm going to say Stafford is going to win. They want to see more out of both Drake May and Bo Nix. I believe both of them, this is their second year in the league. I know Bo Nix is getting all the media attention this year as I'm like savior of the NFL for some reason, but he doesn't have the statistics to back it up. And Drake May, I feel like, well, you know what? I'm about to contradict myself. I'm going to say they're going to give it to Drake May because they believe he is the face of the NFL moving forward. Matthew Stafford has been in the league for a long, long, long time. So they want to push him to the side, push him away, and start promoting the new blood, Drake May, Bo Nix, and those types of players. So I believe, I'm changing it, they're going to give it to Drake May of New England Patriots because he's the future face of the NFL. All right, that's our MVP voting. Have a wonderful day.